It's rather nerve-wracking going after three very eloquent lawyers, all of whom could appear in the Old Bailey for days on end without I've been campaigning for about 5 years now, and for the beginning of that 5 years, I felt a bit like that man who used to walk up and down Oxford Street with a sign. I don't know if you remember the man who warned you against eating too much protein and having too much sex. And I felt for the moment, but now Harry and Alex, notably, has come along, and Alex is obviously going to take over this in a big way, and so I'm grateful. But when I read their research, I have this sort of sinking feeling. Like I have a researcher who sends me emails every morning of the various things she's picked up across Britain in the press. She's a fantastically good and thorough and diligent researcher. And she brings this stuff to me, like poisoned eggs, every morning. And it is really depressing to watch how this government has attacked the basic liberties that we all considered were part of Britain, ourselves, our DNA, or the Pennine chain. It is really shocking when you see the detail. It kind of reminds me of the sort of unnoticed extinction of species. You know, you wake up in the morning, a species of moth or a species of harebell has disappeared, and that is what has happened in the last 5 years. It's been, I think, a pervading quality, I won't use that word, a pervading characteristic of this government to insert wherever it can, in whatever kind of legislation. It could concern eel fisheries, as I was reading this morning, the citing of places where students can rent. It can affect any piece of law, because basically it's their instinct to say, you know, we just believe that we should have these kind of entitlements and powers. It's extraordinary to think that when Shakespeare wrote Othello in 1604 was the case of Sir Main's law. I am fascinated by this case, and I often think it would be a wonderful play. But 1604, and here we are in 2010, we are losing all those established rights that so defined Englishness, what Voltaire called the land of liberty. And that, I think, is a cultural calamity as much as anything else. Apart from being a very practical threat to all of us if this kind of government remains in power over the next decade or so. I wanted just to talk on a wider basis than these people have, because they know the detail. I don't know much about powers of entry. But I do want to talk about an associated, I think, theme, which is the erosion of the idea of the innocent citizen in our society, which I think is a theme that pervades all these issues. And the second one is what I believe to be the land grab of this government, the state sometimes, local authorities, on space. What I mean by public space, private space, and then the personal sphere. I think if you look through the legislation, there is a sense of entitlement in the lawmakers that they now have access and dominance in the public space, and I think we've seen tonight in private space, and I also think you can demonstrate in the personal sphere. There is a territorial expansion going on, and I think it's an important thing to understand that. But let me just talk about this presumed innocence, the presumption of innocence. One of the things that you notice in all the big databases that they set up, the ID card database that Guy Herbert knows so much about, the National Identity Register, the Communications Interception Modernization Program, the NPR cameras on motorways and stuff. There is an assumption that they can take information from us, our information, and use it to determine possible motives in our behaviour. And this is innocent people. This is the entire population as it happens. And I think this is a terribly damaging atmosphere of suspicion and mistrust which fills their legislation, and I think informs and it empowers rather bossy characters at a low level in our society. This suspicion, I think, damages individuals. Palpably, you see the cases in Daily Mail, which is particularly good at covering this, and Daily Telegraph to a lesser degree, but is very good. And my own liberal papers aren't so bad. They're not as good as it happens as the Daily Mail. How people's lives are affected by the sudden focus and concentration of the state in a completely misguided way. The Criminal Records Bureau checks that we all now have to have if we're going to talk to children, which I do, as a matter of fact, as the author of another book, which I won't plug as kindly as children, but I also write a children's series. And I go to schools and talk to children about storytelling and the way I dream of the stories that I tell, and go to the Edinburgh Festival and talk to lots of children there, less fun perhaps. And I now, unless I get my Criminal Records Bureau checked by the Independent Standards Authority, vetting and barring scheme, I won't be able to do this. I find that an astonishing presumption of my malcontent, my bad intentions towards children. And I think that does characterise practically everything that this government does. They say if you have nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Because everyone has something to hide. I have a private life to hide. And we also have a lot to protect in these days. That is our liberty. And I think that the fact we have watched in so much of the legislation has been an attack on this sense of our privacy, our independence. I think a single thread can be seen from the databases to the watching of the surveillance, the CCTV in streets, which I do object to. I mean, I don't know if you know that some 60,000 cameras have been installed since 1998 at a cost of about £500 million. Meanwhile, the numbers of crimes actually being solved by these cameras has gone down by 2/3. So you see, we have to watch the standard reaction to all of this. We need this for a disordered and chaotic society. I always believe actually Britain's a remarkably ordered, respectful and polite society. But given, we have many terrorists, thieves and scallywags, but given what modern problems can be, I think we have an extraordinarily ordered and polite and respectful society. And it's important for us to understand that when we come to argue against this intrusion. You see, the encounters that we have between the ordinary citizen and somebody on authority have now become fraught with this mistrust and suspicion. I don't think anyone who takes a picture now of sunset near St. Paul's, or the Wandsworth bus station, as an Austrian tourist was, or paints a picture of some industrial wasteland near the airport, the London airport, as a man called Liam O'Farrell did, is immediately suspect and subject to questioning by the police under terror laws. I mean, Britain is now the only place where mixing raw sienna and burnt umber becomes an act in preparation for terrorism.